This is
Five up, Doreen?
Starting at 5.
A little bit
Yeah,
lower,
5 up.
get it lower, Doreen, and somehow you're missing a light this time. A little bit further back, maybe? Or angle it so it hits that. Okay, that's probably gonna work. You know, you rolling, Dave?
Transcription and regular. Thank you.
Okay, I'm rolling. Go ahead.
30, take 5.
I'm real curious about what, and this may involve too much generalization, but what was the reaction of the rediscovered, who didn't necessarily know they were lost? You take a John Hurt or a Doc Boggs and you say, there's these people up in Newport, Rhode Island and New York City that want to hear your music, so come with me and you'll play it. Any thoughts about whether these folks, and again, I know it's generalization, were sort of appalled by this new audience, or fascinated by it, or scared of it, or confused by it?
Well, Doc Boggs and I could hardly believe it. I couldn't believe that this was Doc Boggs that made those sounds. And he couldn't believe that somebody remembered those recordings. And I think he was surprised, but he was very pleased. And he said later, within a year or two, that he was really glad that this fulfilled a lot of his lifelong desire to be able to get his music around.
I remember Clarence Ashley, when we visited him, and he'd come up to New York, then we went to visit him again, and he says, I feel like I'm a flower who's blooming a second time. He had that kind of show business attitude about it, but it's very sweet. So he appreciated it. I think people like Roscoe Holcomb, they just took it in stride. They never really had planned to be heroes or on the stage, and they were tremendously honest about it. I think ultimately it's very questionable what this whole thing means, because we're all tools to some idea. We're all just servants to some bigger idea that we're developing there. We're trying to keep it as human as can be, but I mean, after we left Roscoe, then, where was he? Did we leave him hanging? He's a hero hanging on the walls of people's houses in the city, but did it change his life? I don't know.
There were problems
Yeah,
with a lot of musicians.
There's some women from California who were so in awe of him that they used to start writing him letters, and he got in trouble with his wife on account of that. And then they came east and they parked near his house and spent the summer in awe of him. And boy, that created quite a scene too. So it's all anthropology.
Doc Boggs got poison pen letters from other members of the church, unsigned letters. So it raises problems sometimes with your home community, and some people handle that better than others.
I think in Dewey Ballfie's case, he did get a little bit of backlash there, and there's always that problem. He spoke about it. Lots of others have spoken about it too. And a lot of these communities, it's sort of assumed that musicians are kind of rascals anyway, somewhat, that they're not leading the exactly highest form of life. They're looked at suspiciously by the more conservative members of the community. But I think Dewey, and I always felt that Tommy Jarrell, in a way, after seeing that in Dewey, that Tommy Jarrell too shared that same feeling. It was like Dewey and Tommy Jarrell and some of these other people, they had a sixth sense that people like us and others afterwards were going to help their music, not just them, but they were going to help the music of their whole community. Dewey really felt that way about Cajun music. He would really sell the music. When he was first few times that I saw him, he would always make mention of the fact that he wanted everybody to like Cajun music, because they had been pretty much at the bottom of the totem pole for quite a long time. But he knew there was a lot of value there, and he knew there was value to bring it to the cities. And it was just like recently that even his daughters, just this last summer, saw some of what he was doing.
Did the revival, folks like you, when I'm referring to the revival, I'm referring now to the activities of people like you three guys, did you help, through your own study, feed music back into a tradition that wasn't known to the traditional musicians you encountered, but that came out of their their heritage. I'm real interested in that question of whether or not you helped folk communities rediscover material that arose out of their community but had been lost even to them.
Mike, can I intercede for 1 second here? No, this Mike. If we let them talk more amongst themselves, then you get a much more usable 3-shot.
Well,
That's just a choice I want to give you here, because otherwise it doesn't really work too much.
okay. I don't know how we do it when one.
Just don't feel so free.
Just remind me what the question is, and I'll do something with it.
Okay, I want to know if the activities of folks such as you helped feed traditional material back into the communities from which it came, but from which it might have been lost.
Yeah. In my view, and maybe it's my own ignorance, but there was very few fiddle conventions when we started. And then we visited, in 1961, we visited Union Grove, and there was 1,000 people there then. And we made a record of it, and other people, I think there was 3 other city people there at that moment. And within a few years, it became a very large festival. Did we have some function in that change? And what do you think, Mike?
I'm sure that we had some function, and I think that by giving the music validity from outside, quite often that gives it gives validity within.
But are there more fiddle conventions now than there used to be?
There's a few more. I'm not sure how much this approach had anything to do with that. I was thinking more in terms of particular people who got some attention, and then other people realized that there was validity to the music, so they would start playing.
Yeah, I've heard Mark Savoy said some of the best things that were done for the Cajun culture were done by outsiders. I think it was just that coming from a long distance to see the music surprised some people and got them to look again at what they thought was either commonplace or low place, and take a second look and change their minds about it. Now they're proud of it.
I know that Tommy Gerald, I'd spend days, weeks down at Tommy's. There would be somebody from out of town all the time there at Tommy's house, practically. And then also Tommy's longtime friends would also come by to hear the music, also to see just who might be there from out of town. And sometimes these people would play music for Tommy. I remember Yasha and Carrie Aginski came once, and they played some Eastern European music for it, and Tommy loved it. I think that it all became part of this worldwide movement to appreciate the person-made, the handmade music, to bring it back into currency, you see, something that had almost gone.
Well, on that note, perhaps, did you maybe you helped along the demise of the need for something like the New Lost City Ramblers?
Sometimes it felt that way because somebody who was a good traditional musician would then go on their own, be able to almost be in competition with us for a part of the budget. That's fine. I think it's good that we did ourselves out of some commercial possibilities. Not that we were ever commercial, you know.
Well, the thing that I always felt coming over me was the words that Stringbean, the great banjo-playing comedian on the Grand Ole Opry, used to say, "I feel so unnecessary," and I think it's a nice feeling that it's not that what we're doing isn't valid, but that they don't need us anymore. The music will go on, and we just were catalysts.
I do think that we all have something quite unique, both ourselves and the musicians that we learned from, and I'm sure there was room for us then, enough. Depends on what you consider enough. I considered it enough.
The other night after our concert, I was selling our new cassettes and our old reissues of our old music on CDs. And all these grizzly old guys, they all look like Willie Nelson with shaggy hair and beards. They're coming up to me. "I'd like to buy one." I said, "Geez, where's all the kids who used to buy our records?" And then they'd say, "Yeah, you guys turned me on to music 30 years ago." I said, "Oh my God, these are those kids." And none of them looked like doctors or lawyers. I know that. I felt pretty good about it.
I think there was a point too where it looked like we weren't needed anymore. Sort of felt like it was, and that's when we said, "Oh, we're going to quit." And then after a while, it seemed to come a point where we needed to come back and, if for no other reason than just to say this music doesn't die out like that, it continues. And then also it seemed to become evident that there were a few more things we needed to say, and probably there will always be something that's that we can contribute to the scene.
Tracy, you've spent so many years now bringing Cajun music forward. You made records of how to play the fiddle and how this guy plays and ways to sing. I mean, so that if the New Law City Ramblers don't do a concert, it doesn't mean that you're not still involved with the
Right,
music.
right.
Like you've been doing a lot of that too. Lost his frame.
That's okay.
Lost the loop, I should say.
Looks like camera roll number 31 is up.
That's the most dreaded sound. Is this take 6 that you wanted?
31, take 6 up.
Okay.
Sound's rolling, transcription's rolling.
Sound speed.
Okay. Camera's rolling, go ahead. Drop it. Thank you, sir.
John, I probably won't win out on this one, but do you remember what you were saying before we stopped with respect to, I believe, feeding repertoire back into tradition?
No, I don't remember.
Now I'm going to go on.
It's what we're doing when we're not being
Oh,
Ramblers.
yes. When we're not being the New Law City Ramblers, Tracy's been really involved in making Cajun music known, making tapes of it, instruction things, bringing musicians around. Mike's been doing, I don't know how many projects. You should talk about them soon. And I've been making films of the music and making some recordings and writing about it. I mean, it's like the program of the New Law City Ramblers keeps going in spite of the fact that we're not necessarily on stage.
Mike, why don't you talk about some of those projects?
I was reflecting on that today as how we all separately have been following things that are totally compatible with the New Law City Ramblers as a group. Myself, I got very much interested in dance documentation. Is that right way of saying it? And I came out with with the help of the Smithsonian and the National Endowment, I did a dance documentary called Talking Feet, Southern Flatfoot Dancing. And right now, what I'm mostly doing is just trying to get some of the tapes that I made years and years ago out so where people can hear them, and I also my own music a lot too.
Let's switch gears a little bit now from what we've been talking about. When we talk about the broad subject of the folk boom, the commercial folk boom, say, or of the 50s and 60s, the New Law City Ramblers get put together with figures, as I mentioned earlier, Phil Oakes, for one, who I think is pretty distant from what you were doing, and yet, as I said earlier, you end up on the same compact disc reissues put out by Rhino, and you're written about in the same books, and you know, Peter, Paul, and Mary's on those things too. Do you see any connection between any reason as to why that should be so? Why are the New Law City Ramblers and Phil Oakes put on the same retrospective? Do you think they're doing it? And is there a reason for it?
Well, yeah, when you look at the Earth from the moon, you realize that everybody lives there on that same Earth. And I think that's part of what it is. But I remember it distinctly, and it's a very painful and interesting memory. One night we did a concert with Phil Oakes in somewhere outside of Boston. And he was very excited about what he was doing, and we were excited about what we were doing. But he ended up his set with that song, "Here's to the State of Mississippi," and gave him the finger. And we came out right next and we played Mississippi Sawyer, "Here's to the State of Mississippi," from another point of view. The contradiction, the contrast was very dynamic to me, because I found myself on both sides of the fence. Not that it was really a fight, but something had to be worked out. I think it was a great time to live through during the 60s, to bring out the ideas of traditional music, the counterculture, the civil rights movement, the anti-war movement, the Beatles. It was an amazing time, and we were part of that. I'd rather see us as part of that rather than part of Peter, Paul, and Mary, and so forth.
Mike, I sense something.
They have something in common, but I can't tell you what it is. It's hard for me to perceive sometimes what they have in common.
You're referring to?
Those two poles that you were talking of, the New Lost City Ramblers, who are totally traditional, and Phil Oakes, who was a good songwriter, but was trying to say something quite different. It was still acoustic, and it had some connection way back to perhaps Woody Guthrie or some of Pete's songs, which did have definite connection to the same traditional music that we play. But it sometimes was a pretty thin thread.
I wonder sometimes whether we don't get thrown in the same camp because it's something of a political movement, even just us playing this music. The idea of playing the traditional music traditionally rather than prettying it up was almost a political act. Certainly Phil Oakes was political.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask each, well, any of you who want to respond, I want to give you a series of names, and I want to see if you can give me a sense of what you think the importance might be, whether it be musical or cultural or however. Mike, let me start with you, and while it's probably arbitrary in this context, he is your brother, so the name is Pete Seeger. What's Pete's role in the public world been, and what's its importance been?
In 15 words or less,
50
no doubt.
seconds.
Pete has a lot of sides to him as to what he is doing with his music and his stage persona. And part of it's music and the love of traditional music, and that's the part that I'm part of. But he's also trying to do a number of other political acts, such as get people to make music themselves rather than being consumers of music. He's trying to get people to think about other social issues and about the world ecology, too. There's a lot going on. I've chosen to make my, the thing that, I chose my controversy as music.
Anyone else want to address that name, or I'll go on to another?
Well, I'll tell you one thing, that it's unfortunate that Pete is known as a folk singer, because in a way he's an idealist, and this kind of music is one of the things that he does, and he uses as a device to get to many other things. The other thing that, with Congress they always said he's a communist, but I think he's really a catalyst. He brings many people and many issues together. When you speak with Pete, that's what he's always doing. He's making connections, and with a political agenda, but behind the political agenda is not an agitator so much as an idealist. And he has ideals that he doesn't ever want to give up, and he doesn't want to see things go wrong, so that he really he's very active about promoting his ideas and stimulating other people to carry on the work for him.
Alan Lomax.
First of all, he was a family friend, and a brilliant collector. Speaking from my own personal point of view, there's lots of music that I wouldn't be singing if it were not for Alan Lomax. His collecting, and John, of course, and Elizabeth, the collecting that they did for the government in the late 30s and early 40s. And beyond.
Moash.
Well, as I said earlier, Moash, in a way, gave us permission to do what we did, and any project that we ever wanted to do, Mo just said, do it. And in giving us that permission, I know when I did my Kentucky record, he said, all right, you record it, you can edit it. Yeah, if you want to design the notes, you can write the notes, and you can include your photographs. You have a budget of $200. Do anything you want in there. And I said, oh boy, freedom, up to $200. At the same time, with that freedom came an incredible responsibility, that what I did was my work. It represented what I had to offer, my perception of things. And I think that was so incredibly important that Mo gave us the permission to take the responsibility. He didn't take it himself, but I think that was a very important part of it.
I don't like the idea of permission somehow.
Okay.
I like the idea of giving us the means to communicate as artists and as collectors. I think he did that for many, many musicians of different kinds. And the world would be a very different place and not as interesting if it hadn't been for Mo. Pete, John Cage, ourselves, Harry Smith, loads and loads of people who have, I think, a lot to say, and I hope that we do too. Wouldn't have happened if it hadn't been for Moses Ash.
Yeah, I kind of wish we had him back.
Yes.
We need him now.
He had an amazing vision of giving people freedom to do what they want to do, and he chose people to do that.
I'm sorry, that was nice about Moses' part, but the motorcycles were the
Okay.
I don't mind having a motorcycle in the background. It's modern, it's verite.
Last name on my list, and then maybe others on yours, Bob Dylan.
Bob's been a real interesting character since he first came into New York as a kid and invented his own identity. But I think something about him is different, that he somehow has an understanding for the feeling of what blues is and traditional music, as well as all kinds of music. He used the music as a form to get his poetry out, but in the process he brought all of these things together into his poetry. And I'm fascinated by myself even now, so many years later. I can still listen to his records and get that feeling of the spirit of what things were about, and it's not in conflict with what I view of myself. And I've always felt him to be somewhat accessible, even though fame has made him very inaccessible.
He loves and respects traditional music, and he, as John says, he uses it in some of his own work.
Roll out.
Okay, I think we can.
Pretty clean roll out.
Yeah, it's nice and clean.